Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this afternoon's meeting. Your apologies.
Apologies, Provost, from Councillor Milligan and from Victor Bourne, Religious Representative.
Thank you. The order of business.
The order of business as published, Chair. Follow papers in respect of item number 24, the Gorebridge Community Development Trust Hub, and item 25, Lothian buses, have been issued, and additional items, item number 16A on the SJC circular, item 23A on the determination of planning applications, and item 26 on leadership structure have all been issued.
Thank you. May I remind everyone that these meetings are recorded, and if there are any declarations of interest, if not throughout the proceedings, you can declare an interest if you see one coming up. Okay, could we have the minutes of the Midlothian Council meeting, the 24th of September 2013? Okay. Cabinet, 27th of August. And the second one, 27th of August. Planning Committee, 27th of August. General Purposes, 20th of August. Appeals Committee, 24th of July. Performance Reviews and Scrutiny Committee, 3rd of September, 5th of September, 4th of September and 8th of October. Audit Committee, 18th of June. Standards Committee, 27th of March. And Midlothian Safer Communities Board, 7th of May. Thank you. We move to item 5, written questions to the Leader. None received. Item 6, Welfare Reform and the Bedroom Tax. Report by the Director of Resources.
Thanks, Provost. This report sets out the Government's response to the motion relating to welfare reform which was considered in this chamber at the Council meeting in March. Council are invited to note the response as detailed in Appendix 2 of today's papers. Thanks.
Councillor Thompson.
I think we've been over this ground a number of times already. I think we continue to see in the response from the Westminster Government the total detachment they have from the reality of the implementation of this policy. We as a Council continue to oppose the implementation of the bedroom tax and wider welfare reforms, and I think we just need to continue to do everything we possibly can to ensure that message is made loud and clear.
Councillor Pottinger.
Yeah, just as Owen said, we've been over this so many times, the whole of the welfare reform. Obviously, none of us in this room would have had hope of Lord Freud or any of the UK government abolishing welfare reform, and we're aware of that. And also, we know that the best way of getting rid of the bedroom tax is to get rid of the UK government and get a Labour government in power, and that will, as the Labour commitments to abolishing the bedroom tax is all been firmly. The best way to mitigate it is through the Scottish Parliament. We're so fortunate to have devolution, and there's not that many powers within devolved to Scotland that the Housing Act section 16 needs to be reformed. We can maybe concentrate a bit more on getting this done, because the MSP Jackie Bailey, who's lodged the proposal for the Protection from Eviction Bedroom Tax Scotland Act in Holyrood, I think that needs more warranted support from across political parties.
Councillor Thompson.
Just to come back on that, I think we need to be very, very careful with Jackie Bailey's bill, because if we've seen anything, it's that housing associations are very, very worried about the potential impact that could have on them. I mean, why we need legislation to tell us we not to impose a no eviction policy when we and all other SNP-led councils in Scotland have already implemented a no eviction policy. We don't need legislation being proposed by Jackie Bailey to help protect other people in Scotland from Labour-controlled councils. It's absolutely unnecessary to have that legislation, and certainly the commentary coming from housing associations is quite worrying about the impact that proposed bill would have on them and their opportunities to continue to develop new socially rented housing for people around Scotland. I do welcome Councillor Pottinger's comments that the only way to get rid of the bedroom tax is to get rid of the UK government. I wholeheartedly endorse those comments. I think we perhaps have a different idea about how we would do that, though.
Thank you. We accept the report. Thank you. Item 7, review of the Petitions Committee, a report by Mr Blair, Director of Resources.
Thanks, Provost. This report invites the Council to consider revisions to the operation of the Petitions Committee. The Petitions Committee has been operating since March 2013, and details of the 11 petitions considered to date by the Committee are detailed in Appendix 4 of today's papers. Section 5 provides details of the current validation process, and Section 6 of today's papers sets out suggested amendments to the procedures for considering petitions. The appendices attached to today's papers provide full background information, and Council is invited to consider the recommendations which are detailed in Section 9 on page 14 of today's papers. Thanks, Provost.
Thank you. Councillor Rosie.
Yeah, thank you, Provost. When the Petitions Committee was agreed at the Council meeting on the 25th September, it was decided that it would be reviewed every year, and hence this report. The Administration's proposals for amending the scheme are as follows: that the petition statement box be amended, and that's to make it clear that petitions will be rejected and returned to the principal petitioner where wording within the box differs from any accompanying petition signature sheets, and that is explained in 5.4, where the Head of Customer Services has reported that there is some difficulty in dealing with these petitions that come forward. And in the other areas, it's just really to tidy the process up and just stop wasting people's time, really, in a lot of ways. And in some of the instances, petitions are coming forward. We're finding that there is a consultation process already going forward, and that's the area that these petitions should go to, and then be brought forward in the report that will come before Council. So we don't see any point in bringing people to put the petition forward in these instances, and also in the other areas where it's only partly acceptable and in a lot of cases where it is not deemed possible, they do find their way to the Petitions Committee, and it means that we're bringing people in here, and the Petitions Committee is then put on the spot. They either accept and go forward with the petition, or we reject it, and we really don't see any point in bringing them, and these matters should be dealt with by they should be referred to the Head of Customer Services to deal with. So on the basis, I would propose that move that we accept the proposals for the amendment to the Petitions Committee. Thank you.
Councillor Baxter.
Thank you, Provost. I would happily second that. I think, as a member of the Petitions Committee, we have seen quite a sort of learning curve, as it were, not just amongst the members of the committee, but also amongst the general public. I think what we've to date shown quite a sensible approach in taking a measured judgment over whether, for instance, the petition statement is materially different from what's on the actual petition sheets themselves, and decided in many cases that there's no material difference, and we're happy to take that. This tidies up many of the issues which have come up, and I think it's quite a good point at which to reflect and to refine the document, and I'll happily second that motion.
Thank you. Councillor Russell.
Thank you, Provost. Reading through the paperwork, one asked the question, if this proposed scheme had been in place, would the recent petitions on closures of public toilets been accepted? And I think because it was accepted and debated and obviously went through the whole system, and yes, there were changes, we can say that we did listen to the people out there. And these proposals, I feel, dilute the whole scheme by allowing officers to make decisions on what the public are allowed to put forward. The Petitions Committee has been cancelled on 2 or 3 occasions. Obviously, there hasn't been anything particularly. But with recommendation 6.1d in place, there would be hardly any at all. In the past, administrations in Midlothian Council has allowed petitioners to come before full council to put the case, and the council then agrees or not on the merit of the case. Some of the recommendations are practical points regarding wording, etc., and I don't really see there would be a problem with that, because these are understandable. But to think that the head of customer services be the sole person making decisions is wrong. Elected members on the committee must continue to have full powers in that respect. Petitions Committee was an SNP promise, but now they want to silence it by using council officers to make important decisions, and this recommendation flies in the face of their promises.
I really don't see where the point of you've raised the toilets one, but I mean what they put forward could easily have been fed into a consultation process. And that's basically what happened. The folk had to come along here and then speak to it, and then so I don't see that one as being valid. And we're trying to set down the protocol for dealing with the petitions, and that's what the head of customer service, I would think, would have to adhere to.
Councillor Muirhead.
Yeah, thanks, Provost. I don't think it's any secret that the Labour group was lukewarm in terms of the setting up a petitions committee in the first place. But given that we went forward with that, we've participated in it, and participated in it enthusiastically. Margot's right in what she's saying, that the SNP put this forward as being something that they thought was required in the run-up to the election, and then implemented it once they got in. It's been the case since this committee has been formed that on a number of occasions, I think, if the criteria that we're now applying had been applied, a number of the petitions that we've heard around this table would have been rejected, not by councillors but by an officer. And to be perfectly frank, I think that's an abdication of our responsibilities as elected members to put the onus on officers to reject petitions that are coming from a well-meaning, concerned public. And I think that part of the reason that we've kind of bent the rules, if you like, in terms of the petitions committee when they come forward is because they see the effort that people are putting in to the petitions. We can see how passionate they are about the issues that they're bringing forward, and we think that it's right to hear them. Now, the SNP have raised the expectations of the public in terms of the power of a petition committee and the ability of the petition committee to allow them to put their concerns to them, and for these concerns to be dealt with in whatever way that committee thinks it's appropriate. So I don't think that it's a waste of time. I think it's actually quite right that members of the petition committee are put on the spot by members of the public concerned about the issues that they're raising. So I just didn't see the need to make the changes that we're making today, particularly, I think, in terms of abdicating responsibility and passing it on to officers to say no. Because when there are people coming in here with real concerns, what's going to happen is elected members have got to turn around and say, sorry, we're not hearing that. It's not your decision, it's been made by the officer. All the effort that you've put in to putting your petition forward counts for nothing because we ain't going to hear it. So, I don't think that this is a practical way forward, and I certainly think that the final decision as to whether a petition would be heard should be made by the Petitions Committee and not by an officer.
Are you moving an amendment?
I'm moving against the proposals as tabled.
Councillor Thompson.
Thanks, Provost. I personally think we've got guidance that we as councillors set. It's very clear guidance about what should and shouldn't be included in the petitions, and these amendments actually just bring into line an application of that guidance so that the committee can function in a far smoother way. I think it's unfortunate perhaps that Councillor Russell's example was one which had a number of flaws in it, whereby not only had some of the sheets different wording, it had also been proposed by a member of the opposition, which was an absolute clear move away from the very, very clear guidance in the the backup to petitions on who is eligible to present petitions. It absolutely is not for members of the administration or the opposition to lobby and present petitions. So the example that's been used is exactly the wrong one to highlight best practice on the petitions committee. I think there have been a number of good examples where ideas have been able to be brought forward. I think Councillor Constable may mention some examples of that. I think we've got clear guidance. And if we accept petitions that go against that clear guidance, it raises expectations beyond where they should be. We need to be being clear with the public that, yeah, we want to hear the petitions, yeah, we want to hear their ideas. I mean, again, Councillor Russell says that in the past we've been able to hear petitions at the Council. Well, I've been here almost 8 years now, and I've never once, until we had a petitions committee, seen a petition presented at the Council. So I don't know when that was, because it's certainly not been in the last 8 years. So to use that as a bit of a red herring as well. So I would simply agree with the proposal that we accept the amendments in the report.
Councillor Pottinger.
Well, we've got a petitions committee, that's in force, and for people to use that petitions committee, they're going to come up with current issues, contentious issues, things that's live, it's in their minds just now, and I think it's right for them to do that, and I think it's democratically right that they've got an opportunity to do that and actually to be heard. Having some of these clauses in here, that it's up to one officer to be the arbitrator to say whether they actually come to the agenda. I think I'd like to see them come to an agenda and then get knocked back. So I'd like to see the petitions committee themselves democratically deciding whether to hear them or not. And also, I'd like to know how many things on that list of petitions could actually be deemed to be under some form of consultation. So it's a get-out clause to keep them off the agenda. They're going to be under some kind of form of consultation because by their very nature they're concerning current issues and current developments. And to negate the petitions committee like this, it's just too strict on it, and I think it's an attack on democracy.
Councillor Montgomery. Thanks, Provost. I must have missed a joke there. When no one's saying about petitions coming at the full council, there was petitions came at the full council, but it was usually in the form of a deputation, which and all the time I was Provost, and all the time I was on this council, there was never ever a deputation refused. So that could have been in the form of one person or a small group of folk, or a petition that was coming in. So there was scope for the petitions to be held. So that's not just correct. But I mean, for me, I just think this is it's abdicating the responsibility. The petitions committee was set up, and if people have got legitimate concerns, and that's the way that you would see it coming forward, which to me would probably mean that it wouldn't come to the full council, that would be the way to do it. But can I ask, if a petition's turned in, and maybe I've not picked this up in the papers, by the officer, who did they actually appeal to? Who did they go to after that? Anybody give me an answer to that? Mrs Kelly.
My understanding was that if a petition was deemed to be invalid, that we would give advice to the petitioners as to why it was invalid and how they could resubmit it so that it would be valid if that was appropriate. If, for example, it was the wording didn't agree on the front sheet and the backing sheet, etc., we would be able to give them advice so that they could resubmit. If it was something where it was deemed to be subject to consultation or there was an alternative route that they ought to be going down, then we could offer that advice. But no sort of appeal right as such, just the appropriate route for them to make the petition heard.
Okay, can I come back on that, Provost? Right, so if somebody comes in with a petition with 600 names on it and it's deemed not to be worded right, they need to get 600 folk to sign it again. Yeah, they would, according to what you just said there. Councillor Constable.
Thank you, Provost. In supporting the recommendation, what the opposition are saying is that anyone can submit any petition and it comes before the petition committee. This will lead, as Councillor Thompson said, to great disappointment. People prepare to come to speak and then for the committee to turn around invalid and not even discuss it. So this filter system is vital. It's the way it works in other councils which is brought in. We've had a successful good petitions brought in, which have raised issues. One I'm going to refer to later, one I might refer to it now. It's the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit in Lastwade Village. It has opened up the issue, it was well presented, and a very useful form of democracy in the council. But it does require a filter to avoid just any ones to come into the committee just to be ruled invalid and disappoint the people there.
Councillor Baxter.
Thank you, Provost. I think the inference that council officials are having too much influence over the decision-making on bringing matters to council committees is a bit overplayed. I don't see a difference really here in principle with what happens in, say, a planning application. Make sure that all the boxes are all ticked correctly before it actually comes through the proper process. Or, for instance, if a motion is presented to this very committee, that the correct number of signatories have been included, and also that it's not been discussed within the last 6 months, etc. These are just basic requirements. And if we allow the possibility of petitions being brought to Petitions Committee, which do not say exactly the same in the petition statement box as people were signing up to in public, then we could be setting a very dangerous precedent.
Councillor Muirhead.
Can I just say, on the basis of the current system, we've not been inundated with petitions anyway, so I don't think there's a need to kind of cut any of them back as such. I think, there's nothing wrong with having a filter system. Of course, a filter system's right, but we should be accountable for that. The reality here is, I think, that elected members are uncomfortable in saying no to people, and that's part of the problem here. I think you've got to be big enough to turn around and say, no, I'm sorry, I don't think that's a valid thing. It is uncomfortable for elected members to do that, and we shouldn't be shielding ourselves with that, because if we don't think that it's an appropriate petition, we should be standing up and saying so. And I think that this is nothing but, passing it on to officers is nothing but a way of avoiding elected members being unpopular. And that's not what we're here for. You should be justifying the decisions that we take. And I think this is what this is about.
Okay, there's clear divisions here. Those against the recommendations, please show. Those for recommendations, please show. And that's two. Thank you.
Ask a question, please. It's relevant to this. If somebody comes forward with a petition, is there scope for them then to, whether the petition goes ahead or maybe doesn't go ahead, is there still scope for them to ask for a deputation to the council?
I think the answer to that is yes. Okay. Move to item number 8, pre-election period guidance, a report by Mr Blair, Director of Corporate Resources.
Thanks, Provost. This report on pre-election guidance was previously considered by the Standards Committee on the 15th of October 2013, and they recommend approval. Accordingly, this technical report, Council is invited to consider the recommendations as detailed on pages 35 and 36. Thanks.
Councillor Constable.
Thank you, Provost. Yes, I've met with leaders of the opposition. We've discussed this and we're in agreement with these principles.
Okay. Thank you. Item number 9. Partnership Working Update Report. A report by Mr Laurie, Chief Executive.
Thank you, Provost. The purpose of this report is to update the Council on progress of joint partnership working with East Lothian, and also to present a revised Memorandum of Understanding, which is attached to the report as an appendix. The background, I think, is fairly familiar to members, and it hasn't been an entirely uncheckered history of progress, but I do think that there is now a lot of positive joint working going ahead with East Lothian, and the current position is set out in section 3 of the report and covers a range of functions, as you can see, which have previously been considered by the Council. At section 3.2, we set out progress and proposals in relation to environmental health and trading standards. The proposal here is that Midlothian will lead on environmental health and East Lothian on trading standards, initially on a 12-month pilot with an interim review after 6 months, and the details are set out in that section. I think in summary it's fair to say we're taking what might be described as an organic approach to joint partnership working, trying to seize opportunities as they arise. And the aim, of course, is to improve outcomes, but also to make efficiencies and savings in a way that does support the sustainable provision of services going forward. And the recommendations in front of the Council today, to note the current position, to note the revised Memorandum of Understanding, and to approve the arrangements for environmental health and trading standards.
Councillor Constable.
Thank you. These are to be very welcome. It is, as Kenneth said, it's a shame that we didn't go further, but political changes last year made that impossible. Nonetheless, what we are cooperating on is very welcome and should produce savings and, as Kenneth said, better outcomes. I understand this memorandum has already been approved by East Lothian, and I'm happy to recommend it to the Council just now.
Councillor Pottinger.
Yeah, I note the recommendations and agree that cross-border working, is very beneficial in many aspects. And it's great to have this memorandum of articulation because we have the economies of scale by working across borders, and I think maybe we should be doing more of it.
Councillor Emery.
Thanks, Provost. Just to get a reassurance from the Chief Executive that if there are other issues that come up during the lifetime of this Memo of Understanding, that you'll be able to actually speak to the councils and perhaps come back with other areas of work where we can work jointly in partnership, either us taking the lead or East Lothian taking the lead, depending on what part of the organisation it is.
Absolutely. I mean, the purpose of the memorandum is to give us the flexibility to explore all opportunities that arise.
Councillor Thompson.
I think it's important to note that while this is in relation to partnership working with East Lothian, and we have a very developed relationship there, it's not the only area of partnership working we are looking at. There's a number of other opportunities there, both with other neighbouring authorities and also the other parts of the public and private sectors in some cases, to make sure that we can ensure that we maximise the limited resources that we have, given the cutbacks coming from Westminster.
Thank you. Do you accept the recommendations? Thank you. Item 10, Lord Lieutenant for Midlothian, report by Hilary Kelly, Head of Customer Services.
Thanks, Provost. This report is for information and advises Council of the appointment of a new Lord Lieutenant for Midlothian with effect from the 18th of October 2013. Her Majesty's Lord Lieutenants are the representatives of the Crown appointed by the Queen on the advice of the Prime Minister. The outgoing Lord Lieutenant, Patrick Prenter, has intimated his resignation, and he formally retired from the role of Lord Lieutenant with effect from the 18th of October, his last official engagement being accompanying the Duke of York at the Two Scots Homecoming Parade on the 17th. The Queen has now appointed Sir Robert Maxwell Clark, OBE, as her new Lord Lieutenant for Midlothian to succeed Mr Prenter, and the formal announcement of that was made from the Prime Minister's office at 10 Downing Street. The Council is invited to note the new appointment of Sir Robert Clark and to consider formally extending an acknowledgement and thanks to the outgoing Lord Lieutenant Patrick Prenter.
At this point, I would like to thank Patrick Prenter and his wife Susan for diligently carrying out the duties of the Lord Provost. And although we come from very different sides of the political spectrum, he showed me nothing but great courtesy in his dealings with me. And I'm sure we would want to wish him well in his retirement. Okay, Councillor McDonald.
Sorry, I would agree with your sentiments in terms of Patrick Prenter, and hopefully Robert Clark will continue to carry on the good work. But I think I should probably declare an interest. I don't know if I'm still on it or not, but I was on the Pennicoot House Trust. I wasn't met for a while. I'm not sure if I'm still on it or not. And also the Pennicoot Civic Society, Robert Clark's a patron along with myself, so I should probably declare an interest. I hadn't actually thought about it till now, so I'll formally do that now.
Okay, thank you. So we accept the recommendation. Okay, thank you. Item number 11, Strategic Development Plan for Edinburgh and South East Scotland, CES Plan Update. Report by Mr Blair, Director of Resources.
Thanks, Provost. This report advises Council of the Cabinet decision of the 8th of October relating to CES plan. The background is set out in section 2 of the report, and the Council is invited to consider the recommendation as detailed in today's papers. Members have any points of clarification, either myself or my colleague Ian Johnston can assist.
Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, I think we have to commend the work of our team in managing to achieve the deal that we have. Obviously, there has been a number of additional housing units allocated through the supplementary guidance, and the work of Ian Johnson and the team here at Midlothian has ensured that the impact on Midlothian is as an absolute minimum. We're talking about 100 extra units, which I'm sure can be accommodated within our own plans. I think with that, I'm not intending to say too much more on that, other than to move recommendations.
Councillor Emery.
Just to endorse what Councillor Thompson said and maybe take it a bit further, I'm now delighted that if this gets endorsed, then we can carry on with our local development plan and get it back onto the timetable that we were looking for, because clearly with the slippage, it has gone back. But, you know, like Councillor Thompson says, to actually come out of this whole exercise and only be allocated something like 100 houses, which could be probably taken up, dare I say, in 1 or 2 sites, never mind anything else, when it comes to being, I think there's a tremendous amount of work that the officers have put in to safeguard it, because we are taking a heck of a lot of houses. It's our time, it's our share, I accept that, but nevertheless, to actually get it in the sense of the supplementary guideline, that we're only going to have to take 100 more, I think is commendable. I think we should endorse not only the report, but endorse the sentiments of Councillor Thompson and myself.
Okay, any other comments? Okay, do you accept the recommendations? Thank you. We come to item number 12, and I am led to believe that to discuss this item, Council would have to suspend standing orders. Councillor Constable.
Yes, agreed.
Is that agreed? This is standing order. Okay. This is the Bonnyrigg Leisure Centre, a report by Evelyn McHugh, Joint Director of Health and Social Care.
Thank you, Provost. This report seeks approval for an extension to the timescale for Council consideration of proposals for the future of the Bonnyrigg Leisure Centre under the proposed community asset transfer policy. The report confirms that the neighbourhood planning process will not be used to provide an early view of needs that would inform Council decision with regard to the disposal of the asset. Rather, the neighbourhood planning process is about all of the needs in the area and all of the services in that context. It is therefore proposed that Council will consider the future of the leisure centre in February rather than December, as had originally been agreed by Council, and this will be following the seminar that is planned on the community asset transfer policy on the 26th of November. It should also be noted that Council needs to approve a supplementary estimate of costs with regard to the centre during this period, as is outlined in section 3.1 of the report. Thank you.
Councillor Constable.
Thank you, Provost. So with good reluctance to agree to the suspension of standing orders and to this report. Bonnyrigg has received the Lasswade Centre, which the First Minister opened last week, and the high school. It's a magnificent thing, and the disagreements that have been going on for the leisure centre are to be regretted. However, we are where we are, and I'd like to make sure that though this is the last extension we're asked to give to this consideration here, because we really must move to a closure on, not necessarily on the item, not necessarily on the it's a wrong word, sorry, but we must to get a final decision on this whole project. Thank you.
Any other comments? No. Accept the recommendations. Thank you. Standing order are back in play. Item 13, 2014-15 Draft Service Plan, a report by Colin Anderson, Executive Officer, Business Transformation.
Thank you, Provost. The purpose of this report is to present to the Council draft and emphasise the word draft service plans for 2014-15. In the background, members will see the Scottish Government guidance on achieving best value, and indeed the draft plans have been developed by heads of service working with community planning partners and key managers, thereby ensuring alignment with the single Midlothian plan priorities. Each draft plan includes information from the single Midlothian plan's long and medium-term outcomes and short-term priorities, which in turn were informed by a partnership planning day held on 4 September. Work is ongoing to ensure outcomes, actions and indicators are aligned to those of the community planning partners. Circulating the draft plans allows elected members to see and to quality assess priorities and outcomes for each of our Council services. Work will continue on completing the detailed actions, indicators and targets for each plan so that we can establish a robust governance and performance management and public reporting system for 2014-15. And I would indeed encourage relevant Cabinet members and members of PRS to engage and ensure that the final service plans do indeed meet these requirements. Provost, in terms of recommendations, we are asking the Council to approve the draft service plans 2014-15 and to engage in that further consultation process as I previously mentioned. Thank you.
Councillor Constable.
Thank you. Yes, we have some of the draft plans are more fuller than other ones, more made out, but certainly we have the Cabinet members have gone over the parts of their portfolio, and I just move the recommendation to approve the draft service plans.
Councillor Muirhead.
Thanks, Provost. Yeah, I'm happy with the content of the thing. It's always murder when somebody comes and criticises a minute detail of something that a lot of effort's been going into. But I have to say that I'm not keen on the way this is laid out at all. I understand that there's been an effort to try and blow it up in size, because I think there's been complaints in the past with regards to that. But no having the headers at the top of pages and things like that makes it an absolute nightmare to try to read the thing. And I understand, I'm glad that you're saying that it's in very much draft form, because there are a lot of issues with a lot of the targets and things like that are through it. But in terms of the main aims and principles that are in the document, we're quite happy with that.
Councillor Emery.
Just a question, Provost. I mean, when Colin gave his report there just now, he spoke, as is in the report, about working with our community planning partners, and key managers and heads of service have been involved. Now, that's all very high level, but the point of the matter is, under 4.6, if you do our normal checklist, which is on page 124, it talks in terms of involving communities and other stakeholders. Now, I can understand other stakeholders being a high-level community planning partnerships, but when do we actually get down to showing communities what Midlothian and our community planning partnership are trying to do in terms of delivering the service? Because it's all about service delivery, Provost, and I just wondered if Colin could maybe go on to expand on what you were saying and just how that dovetails into involving communities.
Thanks, Councillor. Yeah, the day I referred to on 4 September 2013 was indeed informed by that public consultation, by the neighbourhood planning exercises that went before it, and other engagements with members of the public. There's been extensive engagement, for example, on some of our individual strategic plan, like the Older People's Plan, Children's Services Plans, etc. So there's been a raft of ways in which we've engaged with communities across the Council in terms of getting the plan shaped up, if you like, as has community planning partners, in particular NHS is strong on patient involvement and public engagement and consultation. And as members will see that in the final paragraph in section 2, we do talk about putting this into a public reporting system for 2014-15. So once these service plans have been worked up, as Councillor Muirhead said, once we get the new performance indicators, the new benchmarking indicators in place, they will very much be in the public domain and will be scrutinised by elected members on a quarterly basis and by special cabinet, will be reported as such, and the members of the public will be kept up to date on a regular basis concerning the Council's performance, and indeed, as is the way, individual heads of service will make themselves available for scrutiny in that particular aspect of the plan.
Councillor Thompson.
I think, just to follow that up, I mean, all the plans and through all the thematic levels of community planning are based on extensive public consultation. There's a massive amount of work goes into the background data research and prioritisation that then flows into each of the plans, and then the day that's referred to is an opportunity to pull all these different strands together. So, yeah, a massive amount of public involvement in the base level development that filters all the way through to our own single Midlothian plan and our key strategic priorities, so that it all links up together.
Councillor Pottinger.
Just slight observations on it. Sometimes we get caught up in all the jargon and the civil service kind of speak, and there's maybe overuse of the word, or some words like local, in the document. And so the grammar kind of stuff, and obviously I'm a big advocate for plain English, that if we can put that out, be a bit clearer, especially if you're dealing with third parties and community organisations. I'd like to see it maybe get away from the jargon kind of speak, and to a bit more easily managed, for people to understand, rather than have some words with double meanings in it.
Okay. Accept the recommendation. Thank you. Item 14, a report of the Chief Social Work Officer, 2012-13, a report by Evelyn McHugh. Thank you.
Thank you, Provost. Members, this is the statutory report that's required to outline to members annually how social work services have discharged their statutory responsibility in this area. Members will see from the report that it's an area of very considerable development, where we're actively responding to new challenges, new needs within our community, but above all, developing our practice in a thoughtful and considered way in relation to our experiences. Probably, if I were to highlight one of the areas of where there's been most development, it's been around the whole agenda of working together. Numerous national reports have highlighted again and again the importance of services working together. Locally, we know that it's really important that child protection, adult protection, domestic violence and substance misuse are not sitting in separate silos, that there are very few families where child protection is an issue, that there's not also issues around substance misuse, domestic violence as well. We also know that individuals who present a risk of harm to young children may also present a risk to vulnerable adults. So that's really been reflected in the work we've been doing around how we manage our protection services. And CSOG has this year agreed to moving to a fully integrated public protection unit, where we'll be looking at child protection, adult protection and domestic violence officers all working together, sharing information, but above all developing our practice in all of these areas, and obviously working with our partners in the police, health and other voluntary agencies out with the Council. It's a really important development. It means that we're looking at protection, not just as a series of isolated incidents, but rather protection is something that goes through the whole of the lifespan. For some individuals, we know that the impact of harm is such, and the trauma that people experience, that it leaves them vulnerable to further risk of harm throughout the whole of their lifestyles. So it's really about us moving much more proactively to organising our services around that. There have been other significant developments in the past year, as is highlighted in the report, in relation to child protection. We've seen a reduction of the number of children on the child protection register. Again, that is the outcome of a lot of consideration by professionals in relation to their decision making. What we found is that our numbers were higher relative to other councils, but also that children tended to remain on the register longer. So that's really been about a lot of development in relation to decision making and making sure that the quality of our planning was good. We've also worked with an external organisation with Scotland to review our work in this area, just to make absolutely sure that we're getting it right. In relation to adult protection, we've seen an increase, 107% increase in referrals during the period under consideration. But in some ways, this increase reflects changes in communication between the police and ourselves, and the police are sharing many more concerns with social work services, and you will see from the report that it's a much smaller number or percentage of referrals that will then go on to fuller investigation. And again, we're working, all of these concerns are dealt with as adult protection referrals, and in the course of the coming year what we will see is a reduction in that as we develop new mechanisms and criteria around what we take forward into the adult protection referral arena. The biggest risk around harm remains financial harm, and we have done a lot of work with financial institutions, legal services, etc. locally. We had a very successful seminar earlier in the year just to make sure that all these institutions are aware of the risks, not just older people, people with disabilities, etc. And often these are the institutions who are more likely to be able to detect when things are not right, and making sure that that awareness leads to referrals to ourselves where we can take appropriate action and keep people safe. We've also been very proactive in the area of ensuring training for care home providers, again to make sure that they're fully aware of the risks around adult protection, etc. Criminal justice, again, members will see very significant developments. It was during the year 12-13 that we managed a very high-profile case that wasn't just a considerable challenge to ourselves but also to our local communities. And the learning from that has been very important, and it's an experience that we've been able to share nationally with colleagues at various events. But there's also, members will note, a number of service developments there where we're looking at being much more proactive in understanding the nature of offending, but most importantly, working with other organisations to make sure that we're providing the right support and addressing some of the underlying causes of offending, and supporting people to adopt different behaviours and move on in terms of different lifestyle. Another area worthy of note is the activity in relation to looked after and accommodated children. Again, we've seen a decrease in the number of children in this area, but I think what's been really important is the way that we've moved to supporting more children to remain within Midlothian and to be supported by local carers. And that's a really important development for our children, that we as communities are able to support them within Midlothian. There's also been a strengthening, although the numbers of children supported by kinship carers has remained fairly stable. What we've also seen is a strengthening of our support to those families, and in particular the use of the legislative solutions that we have to move those children to seek more permanent solutions for those children within their kinship families. Other areas highlighted is the continuing work around the skills of our workforce, because at the end of the day the quality of our practitioners is directly related to how well they're supported and their ability to develop their skills and abilities. Going forward, we have a number of challenges ahead, in particular legislative changes, the introduction of self-directed support, the Children and Young People's Bill, both of which we're actively preparing for. The other areas, obviously, the integration of health and social care, managing increased demands within the budgets is going to continue to be a pressure. And perhaps last but not least is how we work with our local communities also remains an important area in terms of the ability of our local communities to support people in their midst who are more vulnerable. I will pause at that point, Provost, and happy to respond to any questions.
Councillor Johnson.
Thank you very much. A lot has been happening, and this administration are grateful for all the hard work that the staff have put in, as well as for improving their own self-development, so we can move forward in a very positive way for Midlothian to work in a much better integrated way to ensure public protection. And I move that we approve these recommendations. Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, you accept the recommendation in the report. Thank you. Item number 15, 20-mile-per-hour speed limit in Lasswade Village and Polton Road, Lasswade. Report by Mr Blair, Director Resources.
Thanks, Provost. This report advises Council of the decision of the Cabinet relating to the introduction of 20-mile-an-hour speed limits. The background has been set in Section 2 of the report, together with the Cabinet's recommendations of the 8th of October. And today, I'm asking Council to note this report. Thank you.
Councillor Cunt.
Could I just ask for a bit of clarity here, not just on this report, but on the report that follows as well. It talks in terms of, in bold on the second page, about referring it to the Council for determination, and then at the bottom the recommendation is to note the report. Now, I don't think that, with the best will in the world, I don't think that makes sense. It should have just been left at it's referred to the Council for determination. It's not. It's just a point on we don't get a lot of call-ins, we don't get a lot of things coming to the Council. But I just rather than let it go, Provost, I'm just putting the marker down. I think it should be written in a clearer and more understandable way. Because if you're reading that outside, in the terms of this is in the public domain, it talks in terms of being referred, and then at the same time it says to note the report. So I'm just raising that as an issue, and not maybe for resolvement today, but certainly for something to be taken up by the officers in the future.
Thanks for the observations. Councillor Constable.
Thank you, Provost, and thank you, Councillor Limerick, for bringing some clarity to this. Yes, we wish to affirm the decision which we took on the Cabinet on the 27th of August, so that would be about 12 weeks ago. I met on this position of the 20-mile-an-hour speed limits. We want to wait for a report bringing it in. We note developments in Portsmouth and in Edinburgh of 20-mile-an-hour zones with great interest, and they could be very valuable, but we would like to get the report from the professionals before making any decisions. I referred earlier to the petitions which came in from members of the Lasswade Civic Society, and I met with them last week on this matter. I said they wanted to know when the report would be coming forward, and I said, well, it can't be done until Councillor gives it clearance, so that's put a 12-week delay on it, on matters. However, nonetheless, we are where we are. I wish to just maintain this position, and we'll get the report, and from then we can proceed on a Midlothian-wide decision on the whole business of 20-mile-an-hour limits. One thing I'd just like to say is that the Civic Society asked for speed checks, and speed checks were done, but they were done very close to the bridge, and they came and asked if they could be done further apart at the 30 signs coming down the Bray and on both sides, rather, from the town, from Edinburgh and from East Bank, if they could be done at the entrance of the village. I've spoken to Ricky about that, and he is agreeable that we shall do that, and see what other information can be got from that. It might illuminate this report. Another thing I've just announced that I've arranged with my HRA money to have a solar-powered sign mounted at the bottom of Poulton Road, where Poulton Road joins the main road, approaching the bridge, which has had a fair number of accidents on the wall beside the paper mill, and this would be a solar-powered warning sign of anyone approaching this dangerous point at excessive speed. Other than that, I just wish to move our original Cabinet decision of the 27th August.
Councillor Baxter.
Thank you, Provost. I welcome the introduction of a solar-powered warning light. I just hope it works at night. I tend to disagree, though, with the thrust of what Councillor Constable has suggested, because I've long maintained that this is one area in Midlothian where it cries out for a pilot to be introduced from which we can inform policy, from which we can learn, while we are at the same time working on a county-wide policy. And I think that what we would learn from that pilot would very much improve how we go forward in the future. And I would like to move that, well, given Councillor Imrie's quite legitimate concerns about how this is presented, I would like to move that that we can, let's say, overcome the decision which the Cabinet has now placed upon us. I don't know how that would be worded. To speed up. That's right. Yes. Yeah.
Sorry, I missed that part. What were you trying to do?
140, not 20.
No.
Speed up the report.
I would like to move that we accept the original report from Review and Scrutiny Committee, which has been subsequently rejected by Cabinet. I think that's the way I want to word it.
Councillor Imrie.
Thanks very much, Provost. I don't think there's an awful lot between us about the principle. I think if the principle has been accepted by all parties within the Council, it's about procedure and approach. Now, what I don't accept is I don't accept the Leader of the Council saying that the report for the overall strategy for Midlothian couldn't be actioned for 12 weeks. That's not true. When it was called in by the Performance and Scrutiny Committee, it was emphasised at that time that the report was not in jeopardy, that was to continue to go ahead, and therefore the only bit that was of concern to the Performance and Scrutiny Committee was getting pilots set up as soon as possible. And you can see, Provost, from the pilots that were mentioned and suggested at the Performance and Scrutiny Committee, it gave an opportunity to actually see how they would work in action. All the areas that were chosen are quite fundamentally different, and therefore what you pick up from a pilot is you pick up exactly what Councillor Baxter says, the information and data that can lead on to formulating overall policy. Now, whether we like it or not, there are accident statistics in road safety that show that 20 miles an hour introduced into areas does have an impact and effect on the quality of life for the citizens. And I think it was terribly important to take the opportunity to put these pilots into place as soon as possible. And it would have given an opportunity in the workings of bringing forward a strategic report for overall for Midlothian, with legislation that may come in from Scottish Government. We don't know where that's going at the moment, and I personally don't know. Some others in the room may have a better understanding of where it's going to go. But certainly the data and the information that's gone back from Edinburgh certainly lends itself to saying that we should have an overall policy for Scotland and allow councils to introduce them without maybe so much red tape as would normally happen. I want to see this happening sooner rather than later, but I think the opportunity to do 5 pilots was the right way forward, and therefore I'm quite happy to support Councillor Baxter in moving that we refer back to the terms of the Performance and Scrutiny Committee's report and actually implement these pilots as soon as possible, with Lasswade perhaps being the one as the front runner, because that's where the petition started with, and I accept wholeheartedly that that was the catalyst for at least having this debate in this chamber today. But certainly not to stop any report that should just to be ready for January, as I understand, in the overall thing, but get the pilots in as soon as possible. And I think it's an important step that Midlothian could take. There's a real determination by communities out there that they want to see 20-mile-an-hour limits put into place. It helps for the health and well-being of our communities, and anything that can do that is certainly a step forward as far as I'm concerned, and therefore I'm quite happy to support the document today which asks for the pilots to be implemented as soon as possible. Thanks, Provost.
Councillor Russell.
Thank you, Provost. Wholeheartedly support my colleague, but just to remind the members that you keep mentioning pilots, that Woodburn had a 20s plenty quite a number of years ago now. Unfortunately, I can't remember the exact years. I just know that I'm having to ask for things to be repainted. And that did indeed show that although, you know, they weren't driving 20, they did reduce their speed limit. And thankfully, there hasn't been any real incidents and accidents in the Woodburn area. So I understand why people would want to move forward with these types of things, especially in areas like Danderall, like Lasswade, and obviously that's why I agreed with them when they came to the Petitions Committee. So I think we should agree with this motion.
Councillor Bennett.
Thanks, Chair. I'm not going to repeat what's already been said, but I also support the report that from the Scrutiny Committee that we go ahead with the pilot schemes, because Margot's right. Why should we wait on a report for Plymouth and Edinburgh to decide some are going to do in Midlothian? But it was done in Woodburn years ago, and Woodburn has a 20-mile limit, Margot. It's more than 10 years. It's more than 10 years. So there is guidelines there. In Danderall, for one of the areas I represent, the Edmiston Road, the main road up to the school, is also a 20-mile limit. And I think it was just about 2 or 3 months ago where they highlighted the painting. But if you go down to Newton Village, and there's not been any accidents, but if you go down to Newton Village, there's a lot of work going on with the railway, but there was a 40-mile limit. That's been reduced to 30. About 8 months ago, there was a school kid coming off the school bus got knocked in. Now, luckily, he was in hospital for 2 or 3 days, but nothing more serious. But again, if it's a 20-mile limit, then it's going to be a big benefit to the health and safety of youngsters, and not just youngsters, older people. I know I'm getting there myself. But I don't think we should be waiting on a report for Plymouth and Edinburgh on a pilot scheme when we've done it. We've already done it in Midlothian, and we should learn from that.
Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, I want to pick up a particular point that Councillor Emery made about there was no need to hold up the strategic assessment. Well, there was, because there was a call-in that says we wish to call in the whole decision of the Cabinet meeting. It's in the papers. You can read it at 2.2. The undersigned wish to call in the whole decision of the Cabinet meeting of the Tuesday, 27th of August. That decision of the Cabinet meeting, the 27th of August, included the point about a detailed report and a comprehensive strategy. So I'm sorry, that is what the call-in said, and that is what puts a stop on that being able to happen. It might not have been an intention, but that's exactly... Well, I'm sorry, the wording is in the report. It is absolutely clear that whether or not that was the intention... Have we been told this report's wrong? There's a suggestion that the wording in this report isn't what was put to performance review and scrutiny. Is that the case? Because this is what was discussed at Cabinet as well. And I would want to be absolutely clear that we're talking about the same thing here, because this is absolutely clear that it was the whole decision of Cabinet that was called in. Could we perhaps have that checked before I carry on?
Sorry, thank you, Provost. No, I remember quite clearly at the meeting I asked that specific question because I was concerned that the call-in may impact on the delivery of the draft policy, and it was quite explicitly confirmed that it was only the pilot schemes that were being called in.
We still have to have this checked. Mr. Blair.
Provost, rather than everybody scatter about papers, I could probably go and identify and get the actual original papers from the committee, if that would help.
Sorry, Provost. 843 of the Performance and Scrutiny Committee of the 3rd of September is pretty clear there that in terms of the call-in was the 20-mile speed limit in Lasswade Village and Polton Road, Lasswade. It goes on about the reference to the Cabinet meeting on the 27th of August. It then talks in terms of the Lasswade part, and it talks in terms of the decision by the decision to recommend to the Cabinet, which doesn't affect the report in any such way. And I certainly know that Councillor Baxter asked the question at the Performance and Scrutiny Committee, because I think the clerk to the committee at the time wanted clarification on that, and it certainly was said from the chair and from other members around there that it wasn't the report that was being called in, it was actually the principle of having a pilot. And it's just from that point, it's not to go in for a second bite of the cherry. I do fundamentally believe that that's what happened, and that's why I made the comment, Provost. It wasn't a kick at anybody, because in actual fact, I actually think that we're all at one about the 20 miles an hour. It's how you get there.
Yeah. Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, my query isn't about the debate that took place at the committee. My question, and what's in the report here, is the form that was submitted with 6 signatures to have a call-in. And the text here, which will have been lifted from the call-in sheet, which will have had to have had 6 signatures on it, is absolutely clear that it was the whole decision that was called in. So whether or not the committee had an intention that it wasn't going to be debated or that wasn't going to be held up, the actual call-in is absolutely explicit, that the whole decision was... I'm sorry, Margot, but that's exactly what was put in, and at least 6 members of the opposition must have signed that.
Can we have a... Right, Derek Mulligan.
Yeah, I think we're playing with semantics here. I mean, irrespective on the decision of the Performance Review and Scrutiny Committee was simply only on the last wage stuff. We can call anything in and then approve it. The only bit that we then asked for was for work to be done on implementing the pilot in last wage right away, and asked for further reports on pilot areas. That was clearly what we asked for. Ian Baxter, as well as 1 or 2 other councillors, asked questions there, and it was made explicitly clear that that's indeed what we were asking for. So therefore, if this is held this up 12 weeks, I cannot see why, even if the wording is of such, why officials would cease to carry out a report. The reality here is that we are struggling to actually convince the people in Lasswade that there's not a need for a 20 miles an hour scheme here after we put one in at Lugton. And I think the people in Lasswade quite rightly had to question why a village like Lasswade, so much like Lugton, with the same kind of traffic going through, if no heavier and bigger vehicles, why they weren't entitled to a 20-mile an hour limit as well. Now, this is quite clear here. There has been 4, perhaps now 5 accidents in that one area over the last year, and this would give them some area of protection by reducing this to 20 miles an hour. And I think that's the way we should move forward.
Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but we can't get away from this, because the call-in was signed by 6 members of the opposition that called in the whole decision of the Cabinet from the 27th of August. The whole decision. 6 members signed a sheet, and that is exactly... The reason I'm stressing this so much is because when that call-in is presented to the Cabinet decision that was to not follow that recommendation of performance review and scrutiny is based on the call-in. It's not based on the discussion of the committee. It's based on the paragraph that's very clear at 2.2. Had the call-in actually been accurate to what we're now being told has been discussed at committee, perhaps the Cabinet would have taken a different position. But the Cabinet was presented with a call-in that said it was calling into the whole decision of the Cabinet meeting of Tuesday, 27th of August, in relation to item 15, introduction of a 20-mile-an-hour zone strategy. Reason being, we do not think it appropriate to delay implementation in Laswade Village and Polton the time it will take for strategic implementation to be agreed. Now, the result of that is obviously having been to delay the whole process for 12 weeks, saying that they didn't want a delay. Now, it's absolutely ridiculous. We can argue semantics, but it's absolutely critical here, because the Cabinet bases its decision on what's presented in front of it, and that's all we can do. We can't just go on, oh well, maybe they didn't actually mean that. Because that's essentially what we've been asked to say here, that when we were presented as a Cabinet, we were going, well, we know that's what it says in the sheet of paper in front of us, but actually, no, they didn't really mean that, so let's just make a decision based on what we think they meant. So I think we need to move forward in this. I think Russell's right. I think we are not 100 miles apart on this. But what we need to do is have a strategic approach to this. I mean, I saw no backup for the reason that any of these particular areas have been picked. And there's any other number of other areas in Midlothian that could sit now and go, well, what about us? Why not us? That's why we need to have a strategic approach to this. And that's why the Cabinet decision to do such is absolutely the right one. And to suddenly now find that we're sort of saying, oh, well, actually, no, that isn't what we meant to call in, but actually we signed a sheet and put our name to it, and 6 of us have signed it. I can't remember which 6, but 6 of us have signed it, and it was to call in the whole decision. And that is exactly why the whole process was frozen. The next paragraph is absolutely clear, freezes the decision of the Cabinet, so none of this could move forward while telling us they want to do it faster.
Councillor Muirhead.
Yeah, Provost, my recollection, by the way, is it was 7, no 6 that had actually signed it. You know, we're getting into a debate here on the basis of the administration looking to score some points in terms of who's delayed this the most. It's not relevant. I think we should be moving to the vote.
Councillor Montgomery.
Thanks. I did indicate earlier. Thanks for letting us in. It's just really on the Pennicote Town Centre one that I did put forward at the time. The Pennicote Town Centre, as you will be aware, does actually have a 20-mile-an-hour limit already, which classes the town centre, which is about the three pedestrian crossings between Liddles and the pedestrian precinct. And it really is from between Peebles Road to Paz Beeslack, and it's not just including Angle Park, it's the whole of that Carlots Road area up to the 30-mile-an-hour sign. I'm not like to be pedantic about it, but I don't want this coming back later on and know the areas that I've actually asked for, so I'm putting that down as a marker at the moment, and I'm quite happy to leave it at that.
Councillor Constable.
Thank you. Well, I agree with Councillor Muirhead. We'll move to the vote on this one. The vote being the original Cabinet decision 2-1 on page 143. That Laswade Village and Polton Road be not be subject to a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit until a strategic implementation process has been agreed. And part B, obviously, when this, we could instruct the Director to bring this forward as soon as possible, to get the officials to bring it forward as soon as possible. And doubtlessly we can look at all the other areas suggested on the back, Pennicote Town Centre, as Councillor Montgomery said, and down them all to Wilson Village. So I propose that.
Okay, we'll move to the vote now. Seconder for the motion. Right.
Can we just clarify what the alternative proposal is? Is it what was debated at the committee or what was written in the call-in?
Baxter, would you like to clarify that?
Sorry, I missed that.
I'm asking, is the amendment to the motion what was debated at the committee or what was actually in the call-in that was signed by 7 members?
Well, I'm just actually thinking that it might be better to propose an amendment to the motion which is presented, which is to go ahead immediately with the Laswade only pilot, to allow that to inform the policy. Will I get a seconder for that?
Provost, the actual call-in is irrelevant here, but the actual decision was for an immediate implementation of the Laswade, with further reports coming back for other pilot areas, and that was the decision. So I'd be quite happy to second Councillor Baxter on that issue.
Okay. The amendment from Councillor Baxter Can we have a show of hands, please? And those in favour of the Cabinet decision? Thank you. We move to item 16A, Scottish Joint Council for Local Government Employees, Personnel Services Circular, Industrial Relations 0130. Sorry, I missed one. Yeah, okay, sorry. It's item number 16, I apologise. It's Mavis Bank House, Last Wade, a report by Mr Blair, Director, Resources.
Thanks, Provost. This report advises Council of the Cabinet's recommendation relating to funding for the Mavis Bank House project. The background is set out in section 2, together with the Cabinet's recommendations of the 8th October, and bearing in mind earlier comments, the Council is invited to consider this report. Thank you.
Councillor Constable.
Thank you, Provost. Yes, well, the recommendation at the end was in line with what Councillor Inwood said. We want to reaffirm this decision to recommend to the Council that in the event of the application to the Heritage Lottery Fund being successful, that's for £3.5 million to initiate the restoration of Mavis Bank House and the grounds around about it, that the Council give consideration to providing financial support to the project. When to go give them the history of it, the Mavis Bank Trust applied to the Heritage Lottery Fund earlier on this year, and while the historical principle of the house was very readily accepted, and the Scottish Committee of the Heritage Lottery Fund really agreed to it, it was when it went south to London that it got reversed. On the grounds that there was not sufficient ground, the two joint partners in this project, which is Midlothian Council and Historic Scotland, were not giving enough support. In fact, they said the Midlothian Council were getting away with murder. I don't entirely agree. Well, I don't necessarily agree with that. We have some of the members have put the HRA money into this project already, and Midlothian Council in the previous administration gave the Mavis Bank Trust backing in the proposals to it in the joint purchase arrangements, which I'm not going to go into just now, but it was backed by the previous administration as well. This commitment I'm prepared to give to it, and I'm seeking the Council to give to it, would be the formation of the car park access, which would be between Wadingburn and Lone Head, and an access road down to the policies, which an estimated figure of 150,000 was given. It is a lot of money, but if it brings in £3.5 million into the county, that can't be bad. The revenue commitment would be to the grounds afterwards, where our ranger service could be provided and ground maintenance, which would be a revenue possibly of 20,000. They are large sums of money, but it is a very iconic building which the previous administration, as I say, have agreed to. The other aspect which was criticised by the Heritage Lottery Fund was made about the community involvement. And I'm pleased to say that a lot of community involvement has been taking place. One of the trust members, Owen and I met with one of the trust members yesterday, Keith McIntosh, a former councillor here, and he is informing the Friends of Mavis Bank and has had several meetings, community meetings, and encouraged more to involve the community in it, and the community are showing great interest. He's getting support on that from the former MSP, Rona Brankin, who's also a member of the trust. So I'm seeking it's a valuable project for Midlothian, and I would seek the Council's approval in reaffirming the Cabinet decision of the 27th of April. Thank you.
Councillor Emery.
Well, Provost, I'm going to move that the Council adopt the recommendation from the Performance and Scrutiny Committee. And again, I just put it on record right now. I'm a great supporter of the restoration of Mavis Bank House, have been for a very long time, and have led on a number of issues in getting that support, and worked very closely with the Chief Executive, former Chief Executive of Historic Scotland, in trying to get things moving along. But what I think the Performance and Scrutiny Committee are concerned about is the financial implications. Now, you have to take that into account with all the other demands on this council. Now, if you get through the first or the second hurdle, or whatever it happens to be, you then have to think about that aligned to some of the other service delivery responsibilities that Midlothian Council have. And all that the Performance and Scrutiny Committee were asking for consideration on is, if there's a success, then it comes back to this council to take that consideration jointly with all the other demands on our services. Now, I know what Councillor Constable is saying, and by the way, Councillor Constable, as an aside, it's dead easy to be on a trust and be a signatory to a trust. Now, I'm not meaning you, I'm meaning the former Councillor Keith McIntosh and the former MSP Rhoda Bankin. But by the way, not a single penny is coming out of their pockets. And that's the point that really needs to be made. So, leaving that aside, as I said, great supporter of this, want to see something happening, but I do think that you have to just have an element of caution on this, that you have to wait till you see if you're successful, and then look at the financial implications to Midlothian Council on this whole aspect. Part of the reason why it's never happened for so many years is because everybody dived and ducked around about when the question was asked about finance. And there's been many, many people, many financiers, for example, that have been involved in the restoration of Mavis Bank House, have walked away from it on the basis that it's the financial implications. And I just think caution is the order of the day. And while I am sympathetic to what Councillor Constable wants to do, I just think on this occasion that we should take it in the round. And therefore I move the recommendation from the Performance and Scrutiny Committee.
Councillor Thompson.
I think it's important to note that, no, I'm not seconding Councillor Rimley, I'm seconding Councillor Constable. I think it's important here to recognise that any funding that we're talking about here is subject to a successful bid to the Heritage Lottery, which will have brought in, as Councillor Constable says, over £3 million to Midlothian. This isn't money that we're just putting in and it will vanish, and then the lottery bid might not be successful and it's gone. It's subject to being successful in a heritage lottery bid. So a lot of the caveats and checks that Councillor Rim is talking about actually have to have been gone through before the funding actually has to be committed. But what we need to do as a council is be seen to be supporting this project, and that's what this agreement of the Cabinet does. It gives that absolute certainty in any progression of funding bids, and we know how much more difficult it is getting to get money out of some of these funding bodies. That to have that certainty of the backup and support from this council, to be able to put that into a funding bid will only enhance it, and then we can perhaps get that £3.5 million from the Heritage Lottery. And again, only at that point does our contribution kick in. If we could take this project forward, the benefits for Midlothian on a wider basis, apart from having the benefits of Mavis Bank House in a longer term, the benefits of having the grounds there to be able to be used by the public for access and for any other number of ventures can't be weighed against the cost that being applied to how much it costs to put in a road or a car park. I think we need to be showing that this council continues to support, as it has done over a number of years now, the efforts of the Mavis Bank Trust in developing this project forward, and by backing the proposal from the Cabinet on the 27th of August, as Councillor Constable is proposing, I think we give that certainty and we strengthen the bid to make sure we can get this extra money into Midlothian.
Councillor Bennett.
Thanks, Provost. I would just like to second Councillor Russell's amendment or motion, because you just kind of throw caution at the wind when it comes to money like this. I'm not the expert on lottery funding, but I know up until last year it was very limited what money you could get for the lottery, because it was all being poured into the Olympic Games down in London. And that is a fact. And we argued, and Derek's a member with me on the Coalfield Alliance, that after the Olympic Games, then London should be frozen off. and the rest of the country should then get their share of the lottery. Now, whether that will happen, I don't know. But we were successful in Dalkeith getting townscape lottery money. I believe Melville Housing's managed to secure, or just about there, secure lottery funding for to refurbish the Corn Exchange in Dalkeith, which that's going to be their main office. So I would, before I could support this, putting money into it, I would like to make sure that we were getting a big grant for the lottery to make this happen, or it's not going to happen.
Thank you, Provost. That's exactly right. We want to get this now. This is similar to the previous item. It's a horse and cart situation. We in this administration want to put the horse before the cart and to get the progress. We will not get, unless Midlothian is seen to us be supportive of this, we could well not succeed in the Heritage Lottery funding. That was one of the comments made by it. Now, one of the trustees members, Chris Lewis, he said he has been told, and I hope he's correct, that Heritage Lottery funding is a bit like your driving test. An awful lot of people fail first time, and mostly you get it the second time. And I really hope, I really hope that's true, because, and this is why I want Midlothian to make this commitment, in that we can get this fund, and then we can proceed. Now, if we don't get it, well, okay, the money will not be there, but to say we're only going to put the money in after the lottery fund has succeeded, it will not happen. It may well not happen. We have to show our commitment first. That's why I'm proposing this motion.
Okay, we have an amendment from Councillor Emery. Those in favour of the amendment, please show. Nope. Those in favour of the proposal.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Okay, the amendment succeeds. We move to item 16A. Scottish Joint Council for Local Government Employees Personnel Services Circular Industrial Relations 01/13. A report by Mr Blair, Director of Resources.
Thanks, Provost. This report seeks Council authorisation to implement SJC Pay Circular 01/13. The two-year pay settlement provides for a 1% increase in the current year and also a similar level for next year, 2014-15. Council is invited to consider the recommendations, which is to authorise implementation of the Industrial Relations Circular as set out in the appendix.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, I think we must welcome this report, although I do note that some of the coverage that there's been in the press around it, that we're imposing a 1% pay rise, which I find quite unusual. I think that terminology, I think, is there because, obviously, if you look into the page A3 at point 5, the terms of the agreement have not actually been agreed by the Joint Trade Union side. So essentially we are imposing a 1% pay rise, and also it's encouraging to see the uplift in the Scottish Local Government living wage to £7.58. I think obviously this will be of benefit to some of our lower paid workforce. So between these two measures, I think that the timing of this is right, and it's encouraging that we can implement this. Move the recommendations in the report.
Thank you. Do we accept the recommendations in the report? Thank you. Item number 17, financial statements for the year ended 31st March 2013. A report by Gary Fairley, Head of Finance and Human Resources.
Thanks, Provost. Provost, this is the first in a suite of financial reports on today's agenda, and this particular report advises Council of the completion of the audit of the financial statements for the year ended 31st March 2013. The financial statements have received an unqualified audit opinion from our auditors, Grant Thornton, and whilst there have been some presentational adjustments as set out in section 3 of the report, the financial performance of the Council for the year remains unchanged. Today, Council is asked to endorse the report.
Councillor Bryant.
I'm pleased to note another year of unqualified audits and the continuation of strong financial stewardship. I'd like to point out to Council that the general fund balance at the year end was 14.08 million, of which 7.29 million was earmarked for specific purposes, and the HRA account balance was a healthy 14.67 million. It was recommended that Council endorse the contents of this report.
Recommendation is accepted. Thank you. Item number 18, Financial Monitoring 2013-14, General Fund Revenue. Report by Gary Fairley, Head of Finance and Human Resources.
Thanks again, Provost. This is the second financial monitoring report for the year and provides Council with an update on the projected performance against the revenue budget, with details of the material variances that have been projected for the year. The detailed performance set out in the Appendix 1 on page 152 of the agenda, and that shows a projected underspend of the year of £0.796 million, or 0.4% of net expenditure. This is an improvement from the position reported to Council on 24th of September, as detailed in section 2.1 of the report. Appendix 2 on pages 153 through 163 of the agenda sets out the material variances that are projected for the year, and myself and colleagues are happy to answer any questions on those. Section 2.2 provides an update on the General Fund Reserve and highlights that at the end of the year we expect the uncommitted element of the reserve to be £7.529 million. I suppose I draw your members' attention to the risk section, and in terms of the risks, members should note that these are projections and they will undoubtedly change as we go, as events unfold in the second half of the year, particularly the impact of weather on roads maintenance, etc. budgets. A further report will be presented to Council in February, and so today I am asking Council to note to again endorse the contents of the report.
Councillor Bryant.
Thank you, Gary. Whilst it's good to note a small projected underspend, the information underlying the make-up of this figure is important to understand. In doing so, we as a Council will need to use this to see where the pressures lie in our funding and as guidance for the difficult decisions which lie ahead of us in the years which follow. I recommend that the Council endorse the contents of this report.
Councillor Johnson.
Thank you. It's a question for, well, Evelyn, we've discussed on lots of occasions the demands of the adult care service and how difficult it is to determine the accurate projections for spend in the area of community care, and I'm asking that you share with the Council the difficulties we're facing with this rising population.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. I guess the pressure seen most in the community care resource panel, and this year in particular, the overspend highlighted there links very directly to actually 4 individuals who've required very intensive support that hadn't been captured in the planning that we did around demographics. Because in one case it was that it was a dispute with another council around local residents that didn't go in our favour, and the other cases was really about individual circumstances deteriorating, but these individuals being young adults who require very intensive support. So we're always vulnerable to these individual packages of care that are very expensive, but the challenge to us is to make sure that we're doing that in the most cost-effective way that we can. All decisions around spend is subject to the test of whether need is critical and substantial, and that's applied across all the decision-making. But it's absolutely, there's no doubt, but this is the biggest challenge we face, is continuing to provide services and in the most cost-effective manner that we can, while also ensuring good outcomes for individuals who require those services. And I can also reassure members that this is a major priority across the whole of the division.
Thank you. And I have another question or statement, please. This one now is for Mary, and as you know, we've been following with the progress in regard to children and families with interest, and ask that you share with me and my fellow councillors today the key reasons for the underspend noted in the paper. Okay, thank you. I think part of the projected underspend at the moment is the investment in children and families over the last few years, and it's now paying dividends. I think we have a change in culture in children and families, and I've said to you before, I'm going to get stickers made for cars that a Midlothian child is a Midlothian child, and that is now beginning to come through. We have a reduction in young people going into residential care, and that is good because we've spoken here before about our £1 million child. We've not placed any children in out-with Midlothian foster care placements over the last 18 months, and again that was the investment in our fostering adoption service. And our 2 new residential units have opened, and Dalkeith House, we're trying to use it to keep youngsters out of residential care rather than bringing them in. So it's about using that facility to actually keep youngsters out. And again, it's, you know, the change in culture. We've got the Family Resilience Project that we've talked about here, where we've got intensive support going into 3 families with 17 children. If those 17 children were to come into care, we would be in an overspend situation. So again, it's about intensive support. So it's all of this work over the last 5 years that is beginning to bear fruit. And also, I have to kind of hold my hand up a wee bit, that we had a couple of really high cost placements that have actually transferred into adult care. So it's about how we work together to prevent that happening in future years, and how we can work together with adult services. So it's not one thing, it's a whole lot of things coming together.
Councillor Montgomery.
Thanks, Provost. Provost, on 162, page 162 of this report, at the top, sport and leisure income. I've been trying to get to the bottom of this since last Friday, and I've got to be honest, I'm not really any further forward. I don't know who I'd ask, whether it be John Blair or Gary, but the first quarter and the second quarter, is that a total of 243,000, or is that 110 in the second quarter, a running total? I've got some other.
My understanding is it's a running total, it's a cumulative for the first 6 periods.
So it's 110,000 over the 6 months? Right, because the figures I've got sent to me today is we're up 185,000, so I'm just not getting this at all. So we really need to try and get to the bottom of this. The questions I've been trying to ask, and I'm not getting an answer to them, I've got to be honest with you. We've already been through the bin loaders, because obviously we've got information that the policy and scrutiny committee, their absenteeism is over 20%, and that was due to the low wages that they're receiving, which this council is culpable in. But what I've been trying to get this information is how many coaches actually left when the market supplement was removed, how many classes were cancelled and have actually been stopped or reinstated, if that's the case, and how many coaches have came back, because I accept there's always 2 sides to this, and how many people are less are actually using the coaching courses and the facilities at the leisure centres. I mean, we try to get this since Friday, and I'm not any further forward. I'm asking it here, because if I got the information, I probably would need to have asked it here. It does actually allude to the final bit of the paragraph there. Removal of the market supplement has resulted in cancellation of some classes. Well, if that's the case and we know that, why can I not get the numbers? So if I can't get it today, I'll wait for the next council meeting. So it'd be useful if I could get that. I don't know if you can give me that now or not.
The detail of that information I don't have to hand, but in terms of the principles, following the market supplement situation for the specialist instructors, the grading evaluation has been completed, and they've moved for exercise level 2 up to grade 5. So it would be my intention to implement that prior to the end of the year. With regard to the specific information, I will take it away from here and come back either through yourself or to the council.
Councillor Thompson.
Just as an addition to that, could we also get information on what services we would have had to stop if we'd kept the market supplement and had to pay out in equal pay claims?
Just on that, Provost, we're actually taking legal advice on that because we don't agree with a thing that you said in that report. So we're actually taking legal advice on that. So that's, the jury's out on that one as well. And I'm not accepting that the figures you put forward were correct. So we can agree to disagree on that, but the information I'm asking for, I certainly like it as soon as possible.
Okay, any other comments on that? We accept the report then. Thank you. Item number 19, Housing Revenue Account and Capital Plan 2013-14. Report by Gary Fairley, Head of Finance and Human Resources.
This financial report provides Council with an update on the housing account, both capital and revenue. Section 2.1 on page 165 highlights that we're projecting an overspend for the year of £396,000. The principal reason for that is the increase in the sums that need to be set aside for irrecoverable rent, and that's directly as a consequence of the welfare reform and the under-occupancy charge. In terms of the capital plan, the projections indicate that we'll spend £17.016 million as detailed in Appendix 2. Today, Council is asked to note the contents of the monitoring report.
Councillor Bryant.
Thank you for that, Gary. You mentioned you'd be giving me a report on the HR investment account. Could you tell me when that will be brought to Council?
Yes, we are working with colleagues in Housing and Community Safety to bring forward a report aimed at December Council to advise on the options around the further investment in housing stock and new build options. So December Council would be the target date for that.
Councillor Muirhead.
Yes, Provost, thanks. We've been very successful as a council over the years in terms of the maintenance of our council housing stock. We have replacement windows programmes, sanitary ware, central heating systems, kitchen replacements. And internally, I think we've probably got some of the best, if not the best, maintained council housing stock in the country. One of the things, though, that I think that in walking around some of your estates, we notice that they're starting to get a bit tired in terms of the fascias of the properties, the Harlan and particularly the fencing and things like that going around the properties. Is there anything being planned by the council to look at this area of maintenance of their council housing stock?
Yep. The longer term HRA projections include a number of works, both external and internal, in terms of the Scottish Housing Quality Standard. And we would reflect those programmes in terms of the review that we're going to undertake in terms of where next and how we prioritise the capital investment.
When will that review?
It's work that's ongoing at the moment with the idea to bring back an investment plan to December Council.
Councillor Thompson.
I think quite rightly the priority for the investment has been new builds, given the number of residents we have on waiting lists, but I'm not taking away from the point that's being made. I think obviously we do see an impact already of the welfare reform in this area. I mean, 529,000 is not an insignificant amount of money, and it's money that could otherwise have been invested in programmes like Councillor Muirhead is suggesting, or additional new build housing. Again, make the point that in this chamber we're agreed that this should not be being implemented on us, but sadly we are at the behest of Westminster, who have decided that this is what they want to do, and this is a very, very real impact. Never mind to the tenants, but this is the impact to us as a council of welfare reform. I mean, on a positive note, if you could call it that, I think while it's a significant amount of money, there's actually, when we start looking at arrears of those who are impacted by the bedroom tax, the amounts that are owed are actually in the main, small amounts. So I think that clearly shows the work that's been undertaken by this council to help and support individuals is working. It's not large amounts that individuals are owing this council. It's smaller amounts, and we're able to help them and work with them to help manage a very, very difficult situation that in most cases isn't of their creation, that simply they found themselves living in a property that happens to have one bedroom more than they've been deemed to be allowed to have by people who own mansions all over the south of the country and probably claim to have their energy bills paid for them by the taxpayer as well, never mind anything else. I'm getting distracted now by my rant. Enough being said on that. I think we see here that we are managing a situation. It's a very real impact on us, and we just have to continue to keep doing what we can.
Councillor Milligan.
Thanks, Provost. I think we're sort of in unanimous agreement on what has to be the priority. But sorry, I think that it's important that when the report comes back, Gary or John, that we do have a look at areas like the Harlan, like some of the car parking areas within our housing estates that fall outside the normal way of funding. In a recent visit along with the head of housing and the head of landscaping, for example, all the way round, Justin kept making the point that he had no revenue budget to maintain areas that had sadly, he had the money to cut the grass and that was it, but through time the areas have become churned up. Some of the footpaths which were outside the highways department now we're starting to lag, same with the car parking and areas such as that. And it's just to ask, because we normally do, and I've got to be frank, so did we. If you tend to think, well, central heating, double glazing, loft installation, new front doors, back doors and that, but they are starting to tire. And where you have an array of privately bought houses or council houses that have been sold, where they've been done up, then it's like everything. You know what it's like when you put a new carpet in your living room, the wife immediately wants new curtains to go with it, because the other part looks a wee bit drab in that. And I think that's the point Jim's making quite well there. So when that report comes back, it would be handy if we had given some consideration to the areas.
Okay. Do you accept the contents of the report? Thank you. Item number 20, General Services Capital Plan 2013-14, Quarter 2 Monitoring. Report by Gary Fairley, Head of Finance and Human Resources.
Provost, this report, the first on the General Services Capital Plan, provides an update for this year's expenditure. As detailed in Appendix 1, pages 173 through 175, expenditure to the 15th of September, broadly the halfway point of the year, was just under £9 million, and we're projecting for expenditure in terms of investment in our school and general fund estate of £25.249 million. We see funding coming in principally around last wave of £10.426 million, and if we fund the plan, we'll be borrowing a net sum of £14.823 million. Again, today, Council has asked them to note the monitoring report.
Councillor Bryant.
I ask the Council to note the report.
Councillor Muirhead.
Provost, can I just ask a question on the page 171, the Snow Sports Centre, the 114,000. Is this the amount of money that is possible we could recover through legal proceedings? And that's still ongoing?
Yes, I confirm legal proceedings are ongoing.
Thank you. Do you accept the report? Thank you. Item number 21, General Services Capital Plan 2013-14 to 2017-18. Report by Gary Fairley, Head of Finance and Human Resources.
Thanks, Provost. This is a second report on the General Services Capital Plan. It provides an update on the overall plan through to the period 2017-18 and includes new essential and unavoidable projects for Council's consideration. Section 2.1 sets out a number of adjustments that have been made to the profile expenditure on the planned investment, these are changes that we needed to bring forward since the last report back in June. It also highlights the projects encompassed by the extension of the plan through to March 2018. Section 2.2 seeks approval for 2 additional projects at this time. Investment of 24,000 in IT servers in terms of core social care systems, and £10,000 for site investigations in respect to remedial works at Iron Mills Park. Today, Council is asked to approve the plan shown in Appendices 1 and 2, and to consider the projects identified as essential and approve as appropriate. Thank you.
Councillor Bryant.
Thank you, Gary. This revised plan welcomes a capital spend of £66 million to ensure the Council remains fit for purpose, with specific investment in schools, both primary and secondary, to be welcomed. This is in spite of pressure on public finances. It has been secured prudently and leveraging in funds from developer contributions and the Scottish Government, and these are noted and to be welcomed. I would ask the Council to A. Approve the proposed General Services Capital Plan 2013-14 to 2017-18 as shown in Appendices 1 and 2. I regret to have to point out that in Appendix 1 that the estimate for the road repairs at Lugton has now risen to £1.9 million. Item B. Council to consider the projects identified as essential and approve as appropriate.
Councillor Russell.
Thank you, Provost. I won't make mention of the cost rises to Lugton. I do welcome the Iron Mills Park investment that's going to be put in there to find out what work can be done. Hopefully it won't go into any more funding than is here listed. It is a well-used park before it had the landslip, and as I say, I do welcome this coming forward and look forward to seeing any improvement on it.
Could we accept the recommendations of the report? Thank you. Item number 22, Treasury Management Mid-Year Review Report 2013-14, report by Gary Fairley, Head of Finance and Human Resources.
Provost, this report now provides Council with an update on the Treasury Management activity for the first half of the year. The detailed report is enclosed in page 191 onwards, and the main points are summarised in the actual report itself, set in section 3. The table on page 186 of the agenda gives members an update on the borrowing and investment portfolio of the Council at the 30th of September. And I suppose overall the report again highlights the effectiveness of our Treasury management activity during the first half of the year, and that reflects an ongoing effective strategy. Again, for 12-13 we were the Council with the lowest borrowing cost across Scotland. I expect that in the second half of the year that Treasury management activity will be in line with the strategy. The report also updates the prudential indicators required by the Prudential Code to reflect the outturn position for last year's capital expenditure and the updated capital plans that were earlier on the agenda. The recommendations for Council to consider today are set out in section 8 on page 190 of the agenda.
Thank you. Councillor Bryant.
Thanks again, Gary. At the Audit Committee, we heard that Midlothian were the lowest local authority in Scotland in regards to financing costs, and this is very good news indeed. I ask the Council to agree with the recommendations at paragraph 8 of the report.
Does Council accept the recommendations of the report? Thank you. Item number 23, the Revenue Budget 2014-15 to 2016-17, report by Gary Fairley, Head of Finance and Human Resources. Thank you.
This is the last financial report on today's agenda and is forward-looking in terms of the next 3 years' budget. It provides Council with an update on the local government finance settlement, the budget projections for the next 3 years, savings targets, proposals to address the budget shortfall, and also touches on reserves that we've heard earlier on today's agenda. In terms of the Scottish Government grant settlement, For 15-16, we would have been normal practice to update the indicators used for the grant distribution process to reflect up-to-date data such as school rolls, population statistics, etc. COSLA Leaders' position is that the distribution formula shouldn't be updated, and as such, effectively the 15-16 grant would be simply a roll forward of the 14-15 position. Ultimately, that's a decision for Scottish Government Ministers, and if they uphold, if they agree with the view of COSLA Leaders, then we wouldn't see any increase in grant for 15-16 to reflect our increasing population, etc. We won't expect the grant settlement and final decisions until probably early December, and in the meantime the projections in this report are based on those that were in front of Council back in 24 September. In terms of the cost of services, the table on page 211 of the agenda sets out the latest projections on the cost of providing services, and that reflects the assumptions set out in section 4 of the report, including the element of pay award that we heard earlier on today's agenda. In terms of the 2014-15 budget, we expect transformational savings of £1.995 million, and we have already heard of operational savings at Council in September. It was the intention of the management team to bring forward savings, further proposals to balance the budget to Council today, having been through the Business Transformation Steering Group. However, the SLG Strategic Leadership Group are continuing to develop these proposals, and at this point it's expected that they will now come forward to the Business Transformation Steering Group on the 3rd of December and then through Council on the 17th of December. So as we stand at today's date, there's a budget shortfall of £1.095 million in proposals. Further proposals will be brought forward in December. In terms of the later years, in addition to the £1 million shortfall for 14-15, we are projecting service expenditure to rise, or the gap between service expenditure and projected income to rise by a further £3.7 million in 15-16, and then a further £8.7 million in 16-17, a cumulative shortfall by March 2017 of £13.5 million. We've set out already in the report in September the proposals to address that, and again these will be brought forward under the direction of Business Transformation Steering Group. So turning to the recommendations, these are set out in section 10. To note the update on Scottish Government grant, today I'm asking Council, as it's a condition of the grant settlement, to approve the continuation of the council tax freeze with a Band D council tax of £1,200 and the council tax across bands A, etc., set out in Appendix 1. To note the proposals to address the remaining shortfall will come forward to Council in December, and to note the projections set out in Recommendation D in terms of the later years. Thanks, Provost.
Councillor Bryant.
Thank you, Gary, not just because it's the last report. This administration is pleased to see that the SNP policy to freeze council tax is continuing to allow those who face rising costs or diminishing wages to manage their household budgets, and this council will ensure that as far as possible the impact on services within the community is minimised. I ask you to endorse the report.
Councillor Muirhead.
Yeah, freezing council tax and no supporting councils to be able to afford the consequences of that is, I think, is being seen through the number of cuts that we're having to take as a council and other councils as well. The situation going forward is changing every time we get papers here before us. Now, while the budget gap for the coming year is down, relatively speaking, low at just over £1 million, you know, the concern is if we're going to take that from the reserves, sorry, if we're going to take that from the reserves, that has the effect of fixing it for this year, but not having any effect on the subsequent years' shortfalls, which are currently, according to this, providing we're able to make the transformation savings that have been programmed almost 5 million next year and 13.5 million the year thereafter. What we've also got to bear in mind in terms of if we do end up bridging this year's gap with the reserves is the reason that the reserves increased from what they were just not long after this administration took office to where they are now was arrived at on the basis of cutting back on a lot of the capital projects that were in place to be done, like replacing windows in schools and that kind of thing. So, while we've got it down to a level at the moment that we feel we can probably bridge, that's no without pain, and that's nothing to the pain that's going to come in the next 2 years as we try to find, in 2 years' time, £13.5 million of savings on the revenue spending.
Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, again, I would also welcome the fact that we're able to implement the council tax freeze again, as agreed with the Scottish Government, who have done everything they possibly can within limited powers to protect the budgets of local government. If we look at some of the cuts local government in the south are facing, compared to what we are having to make the decisions on, it is absolutely night and day. Scottish local government's proportion of the Scottish Government's fixed budget has been maintained and is actually up since the SNP took over the administration in Holyrood. So to say that the local councils are not supported by the Scottish Government is a bit of a, well, it's being a wee bit liberal with the facts. Disingenuous, that's a very good word, yes. Especially when we look at the decision at council leaders. I substituted for the council leader that day, and it was absolutely unbelievable that having had the normal process of updating the distribution indicators which take account of population growth, having had that discussed and debated by the distribution steering group, and it was only Labour council leaders to reject that advice, because every other council leader in Scotland who was in attendance at that meeting voted against the proposal to do that. I agree with Councillor Muirhead, it's a challenge to meet the budget, but we've known that for a significant number of years now. It will be a challenge going ahead in 15, 16, 16, 17. But if you look at the sort of the demographic cost pressures that Gary highlights on page 211, those cost pressures in 15-16 are about £1.5 million of the 4.8 million that we see as the gap on page 213, increasing to 4.6 million in 16-17, which would take your 13.5 million down to 9. So straight away, simply by changing the distribution formula, we could have seen a significant improvement in our budget position. Yet, thanks to, I accept not Labour members in this council, but Labour members in other councils taking a view that protected the councils in the west of Scotland, we are being penalised for that decision. So to say that the Scottish Government are somehow not protecting our councils is quite something else. Obviously, we do continue to work hard in the budget. Councillor Bryant leads on that, and through the Business Transformation Steering Group, we do continue to develop ideas and thoughts on how further budget savings can be met. And again, I'm probably starting to sound a bit like a broken record here, but maybe I'll get a recording after the meeting, and the next meeting I can just hit play when we come to this point in the meeting. If the Labour group would take part in the Business Transformation Steering Group, perhaps we could actually make even further progress, because we'll be able to take advantage of the wisdom and knowledge of the experience of all those years to help facilitate us in bridging this budget gap. I don't really want to say too much more, Provost. I think I've pretty much covered off just about everything I was looking to say. There was something else, but it's gone out of my mind now. I just extend the invite once again for the Labour Group to participate in the Business Transformation Steering Group, because that's the only way we're all going to get there.
Councillor Baxter.
Thank you, Provost. I would endorse that invitation as well to the Labour Group, to the Business Transformation Steering Group. I'd just like to record my disagreement with the council tax freeze. I think it's often touted as being something which helps ordinary people, and it's nothing of the sort. It costs us all about £70 million a year, year on year on year, and now it's accumulated to about £430 million, which is taken out of the Scottish budget and principally helps people in big houses who don't get housing benefits. So it's a subsidy of the poor to the rich. So I do not agree with the council tax freeze. However, I will be supporting the recommendation of 10B because we've got a gun held to our heads, and if we refuse to maintain the council tax freeze, we would be hit by such a large fine from the Scottish Government that it certainly wouldn't be worth considering.
Okay, do we accept the recommendations in the report? Thank you. Item number 23A, proposed revision of the Council scheme of delegation for the determination of planning applications, a report by Mary Smith, Director Education, Communities and Economy.
Thank you, Provost. This report is just an update of a report of the 27th of August. The report advises Council that the Scottish Ministers have approved this Council submitted revised scheme of delegation for the determination of applications for planning permission and recommends the Council to formally adopt this revised scheme.
Councillor Thompson.
27th of August was certainly a very busy day. I think that this report's been through Planning Committee. I see no reason not to move with the recommendations in the report.
Okay, we accept the recommendation of the report. Thank you.